So, Dre, thank you, number one, for being here today.
You.
You got a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a bebe in my belly.
You have a bebe.
This is the biggest that the belly has looked. And what happens is, because this right now is actually a lot of food. So
it's a burrito bebe and a regular bebe.
It swells over the day.
Yeah.
And we are, as you know, in the eve right now.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the largest that it has been.
Yeah. How do you feel about it?
I don't know. I feel about it physically, this is odd because like I wake up in the morning and it's like more flat again. And I'm like, is this a dream? I mean, it's not flat. My body looks very different. People who know me are like, you look pregnant. And then people who don't know me don't. And that's a funny thing too. One observation so far, I'm 5 months pregnant. Mm-hmm. And so far, one observation is people are much more candid with their comments on your body. Which is
right, you
like,
open it up. It's like, oh, there's something happening here.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I have some opinions on that.
Yeah, here's what I think about it, even though I've never been pregnant. And I'm like, great, let me hear it.
What's the best little nugget that you've
I
received?
get a lot of, which I appreciate, I guess. I don't know. I feel very conflicted right now, and I'll explain more in a minute. But I get a lot of like I went to yoga the other day, and it's prenatal. So like all the women, you have to go around one by one and say your name and how far along you are and whether it's your first child. Great.
Yeah.
I can do that. And
easy.
Then I always see people give a little look. This is usually in the morning when my stomach is more flat. And then, the other day, the yoga teacher after, it was a new one who I hadn't been to yet. She was like, I was shocked when you said how far along you were. You don't even look pregnant. And I was like, oh, I look pregnant. If you knew my regular body,
yeah,
I have a shape where my middle is the smallest part of me, aside from my neck,
Are you inviting me to make some comments on it?
Would it be funny if my neck was the largest part of me?
Yeah, your neck shrinks. Well, it all goes to the baby.
Yeah.
She needs a neck too.
I'm just wider and straighter than my normal.
Yeah.
And then none of my clothes fit. But I also don't have the bump to do like the maternity thing.
Yeah, so you're really
Lots
a
of
lot
things.
of things are going. Like literally,
Yeah.
like you are with Bebe. You
Yes.
are moving.
Yeah.
You got engaged how long ago?
Oh God. Well, we officially got engaged in November, and then like everything happened at the same time. So he already had the ring being made, which I didn't know, but this is a relationship where for once in my life, there's been no question. Like we were like, we're going to marry each other. Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
Like we love each other and we're going to have babies and stuff. Probably just one baby, but who knows? If it's anything like this one, we might have another one.
Yeah.
So it was like, we knew we were getting married, and we had just said out loud, like, let's try in the spring. And something about saying that opened the portal of possibility, and literally just like one time got a little swept up in the moment, and now I'm pregnant, which is like, you would think that's like when you're a teenager and you're like, oh no, it just takes one time. But when you're in your 30s, like people are like, your body's decaying, all of your eggs are gone. It can take you years, which is what all of our friends were saying. And I was like, ugh. Yes, after the freak out that we both had, because it wasn't like on our timeline, right? We want to control life, which is like, we can't really. You can we have free will, and we can have sort of a plan, but you got to go with the flow, because really like things like fertility and like, I don't know, in this profession, like jobs coming to you, like you really don't have control. Maybe any profession, you don't have control of what job you're actually going to get. You can do your best. And the same with the fertility thing. So after we had a minor freak out for like a week, we had to be like, oh, let's just be grateful, because so many people do struggle.
All the time. Yeah.
Then everyone who I also know who was trying, couldn't get pregnant. And they're like, oh, we give up. Get pregnant. Because there's a stress.
The
I
resistance,
think you
absolutely, yes.
There is I think your mind makes your body stressed out, and that changes things for some reason. I don't know. They can't prove that medically, but it seems to be everybody's experience.
Well, have there been other times in your life where people say that about acting, improv, all that stuff. It's like when you're trying, it's not working. Mm-hmm. Has there been another instance in your life where you were able to just release that that kind of need, that kind of strained?
Yeah. I mean, when I booked Angie Tribeca, which was my first series regular show, that year, I had booked a pilot just a few months before that, and it didn't get picked up. And that was disappointing, but whatever. I mean, that happens all the time. But I think...
But it's tough if it's your first pilot. Yeah.
And then... I did this thing called The Lotus and the Lily, which is it's a book, and it's a 30-day guided journaling sort of thing. It's very spiritual.
Of course.
Working through all the shit, but it's based on the Buddhist principle of if you want things to come to you, if you want to grow a garden, you have to till the soil. You can't just throw some seeds in the ground and be like, why didn't it grow? Mm-hmm. You need to tend to the soil. So that's your own personal stuff and working on yourself, and
you get what you give.
Yeah. And the first week they guide you through, each day is within the focus of just knowing I am my own shaman. You don't need a psychic or a priest or a rabbi to tell you what's right or what's good. It doesn't mean you can't believe in those people,
and they could be helpful, but you don't need them.
But you also have everything within you to have a connection with the energy of the world or God or whatever you're going to call it.
Yeah.
And you're supported, and you have everything you need.
Yes.
To make your life great.
Yes.
So that's
you have
the
all
first
the power.
week.
You have the power, yes.
Yeah. And then the second week.
Well, real quick though, how you read it, you journal about it. You
read it, and then each day there's guided journaling.
Okay.
And she'll give you some questions to sort of get it going if you don't feel inspired to just write.
Yeah.
And there's no wrong or right writing.
Of course.
You just,
because it's all for you anyways.
Flow,
Yeah.
And stuff will come out and you're like, oh, I didn't even know I thought that. And then the second week you look back on stuff in your life that may have been bad. And you find what you learned from it. So you're giving gratitude for even the negative things in life. So that's an important thing that I think people can struggle with.
All the time. Not looking at challenges and bad things as lessons, and instead something that the world is hurting them for some reason.
Yeah. And I'm sure the more traumatic the thing, the harder it is to find what good came out of it. And that sometimes, this book also doesn't force you to. You also might not be ready to with certain topics, and that's okay too. Leave it alone for now. Just do the things you can, and maybe some point in the future, you can look at something in a different way as time has gone on and your life has changed, and you were like, oh wow, and that led to this and this led to that, and look at that, and that was a bad thing, but it connected me to all these people, or whatever the good thing is. So there's always a good
with
thing
many
to
times
find.
With people in your past who you maybe feel like they hurt you and there's a disturbance thinking about them. Many times it is well, they introduced me to this person who I love.
Yeah
Absolutely.
So there's always something you can find, but sometimes we need to kind of pull back, and the only thing that can allow us to pull back is just time. So there's nothing you can do about that but live
and accept it, and just let it go for a moment.
Then it goes into a week of forgiveness, which is most challenging, I find, and all of my friends who've done this book find that most challenging. You forgive others.
People don't deserve it. That's why they think the person doesn't deserve to be forgiven.
It's just hard. But when, what they talk about in that book, and it's a Buddhist thing, is when we are holding anger against someone else, we think that we're hurting them, but we're actually just hurting ourselves. They don't care. They're not walking around being like, ooh, I feel that anger. Like, no, you are only hurting yourself. So that week's hard. And then you have to also forgive yourself, which is like, at first I was like, I don't need to forgive myself. I'm fine with myself. And then I was like, oh, and then like things come up.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's like, and I've done it for years. So I feel like layers of the onion. Like I feel like the first year I did it, maybe I didn't go as deep as I could have. But you know, that's also just the journey of it. And I've done it several times now.
It's how much time?
30 days.
30 days.
Yeah. So it's, 4 weeks. And then the final week is fun. You get to look forward and you get to sort of like, it's almost like you're, you put things in your cart, quote, cart, and it's like a spiritual vision board basically that you're making. But by that point, the goal is that your vision board for the year ahead isn't just like all, physical things and material things. Right. And it's more like principles and like, if you're like, I want to book a series regular on a new show and I want to this and that and that. And it's like, what does that ultimately mean? I want joyful work.
Yes.
Right?
Right. The why behind that type of goal.
I want financial freedom.
Yes.
Ultimately, usually financial freedom is behind most stuff.
Yeah.
Like, why do you want this and that and this and that? You just want to be free. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us feel like we can't do certain things in life because we're sort of bound by our circumstances. Yes. And we all just want freedom on some level. So it teaches you to kind of look at things like that too.
Yeah, and that's a big one. I think that's an excuse I've used a lot in my life, and it just perpetuates.
Yeah. And
so I've been working a lot on thinking about abundance, believing in the abundance.
Yes.
That everything can be taken care of, but you need to do the work.
Right.
But like scarcity, I believe that a scarcity mindset is what gets us into a little bit of where we are in the country with greed, power. When you believe that other people having power, it takes away from yours.
Right.
But anyways, not to extrapolate too much, but it is...
No, it's totally.
It's a beautiful process. I've kind of heard about this, Lotus and the Lily, but I mean Buddhist ideals and stuff like that. I've been reading some other books similar, and you've done this 4 years in a row.
I think I've actually done it for longer than that. I think I started doing it in 2013.
Congrats for finding it. And having it for this long.
I'm pretty sure, because I think I booked Angie Tribeca in 2014.
Okay. How did you find it?
I don't remember. So many people have asked me that. And then I have passed it on to so many people.
And more this way, yes.
And then I keep, I put it in my Instagram, and then the women who are on who are all adjacent to me now, they're doing it. And it's so funny, and I had a moment of ego where someone else had posted about it and they're like, we're going to do this, which I did in 2014, let's all do the book and then we'll meet every Sunday and we'll talk about it. And I was I had a moment of why didn't they credit me for being the originator of this
this was a
idea?
friend of yours who did it.
Yeah, but not a close friend, an acquaintance. And then I had to laugh at myself and be like, who cares? That's just my ego being, what an ego is. But that was the goal, that people do it.
Yeah, but you didn't get the credit.
And it's does not matter. You can't do it for the credit. So I had to laugh at myself. But I had that human moment of and who introduced you to that book?
I know, and that's the comment you could say and then make them feel weird.
Yeah.
Or you go, hold on a second. How quick did it take for you to witness your ego like that?
Oh, it's pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm guessing, you're probably in a spot where you're seeing it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what a wonderful place that is too, to feel those calm disturbances where you're and then you're hold on.
Right.
Oh, this isn't as big of a deal. What is that? Okay. because you're behind all of that. That was
Right.
a book I recently read called The Untethered Soul. Talks about
Yes.
you've read Michael Singer.
So
Yes.
I read that, and that
Yes.
was
that one changed everything for me.
that one changed everything, and it came at an amazing time. So actually, when I was told about that book, a series of odd things had been happening that are going to make me sound crazy.
I love a series of coincidences.
So I was walking with my friend Mal, and I will give her credit for telling me about this book. Thank you, Mallory Glenn. So she told me about the book, but we were hiking, and I told her that all of a sudden I had been seeing all these rabbits in LA. And I was like, where are these rabbits coming from? What's happening? I've been here for like 9 years and I've never seen one. And then the most odd was like, I was driving home on my street, and it's a quiet street, and there was just a rabbit in the middle of the road. It was night. And I was like, that's weird. And then as I pulled up, instead of it like hopping off like it normally would, it stopped dead and it turned towards the car and like hopped right directly towards me and just stood there and stared at me for a minute. And I was like, and I'm an insane person who I was like, this is a sign. I need to look it up.
I don't think that's insane.
And I also
all.
I'm so like into animals and connected with animals.
Yes.
And I do have this book called Animal Speak, and it's like Native American meanings for animals. And like sometimes things happen where I'm like, is that supposed to be a message for me?
Right. Well, that's just where spirit animals come from, right?
Right.
Same kind of idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily like connect to a certain spirit animal. But when stuff like that happens, I go to the book and I'm like, was that a message for me or what? And then, so the rabbit was like fertility, duh. It was like not that shocking and all this stuff. And I was like, huh. And, this was in early September. And I had gone through the year. I did pilot season and like had 2 tests, and they both fell through at the last minute, which was so upsetting. On the same day, I was in Gelson's, and I was like, the first one fell through, and I was like,
at least I got the other one.
it just wasn't meant for me. That's fine. And I was like, totally fine. And then I went and I was like, I'm going to do something nice for myself. And I went to Gelson's, and they had these giant sunflowers. And so I got like more than usual. So I had a gigantic bouquet of huge yellow sunflowers. And I was like, these are so nice. It'll brighten up my apartment. And like holding the flowers, I get the second call that the second one is not going through. And I just welled up with tears. And I was like, ugh. And I was like just trying to check out. And I'm like so clear, like if I would have just blinked, the water would have come out. The juxtaposition between the flowers and my crying. I was just like, what's happening? But anyway, that happened. And then, so like, long story short, I didn't get my show was canceled before that pilot season. And I was like, great. And I'm ready to go. This is the first pilot season I'm available in 5 years. This is awesome. 2 tests. Great. Oh, neither of them went through. God damn it. And then I didn't get a series this past year. And I was like, huh. And that was hard. And then I started, just being like, I don't know, what am I supposed to be? But the voiceover like kicked up a notch, which I have always done voiceover. And I'm a voice on How to Train Your Dragon, the series, which is awesome. And I'm so grateful. And that went forever. But then that ended. And then weirdly, like other voiceover things like commercially picked up and stuff. And I was like, huh, but I'm just not used to a career in voiceover. So I, once again, like not looking at what's in front of me and just being like saying yes, and this is awesome, and thinking I have an idea of how it's supposed to go, and then being disappointed because it's not going in that way, instead of just being like, wow, but look at what way it is going.
Right.
So we're talking about all this. And then the rabbit thing happens, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what is going on. I didn't get a series. The voiceover has picked up, and now these rabbits are showing up. And it's like, what's going on? Am I supposed to be pregnant or something? I literally said that. And then she's like, yeah, I don't know. That's so weird. And we're hiking, and then another rabbit. And I was like, come on. And then she tells me, oh, this reminds me of this book by Michael A. Singer. But so I was like, I'm going to read these books, and I feel so inspired by all of that. 2 days later, I got pregnant. And I said to Mal, I was like, I'm just going to say yes to whatever comes. And then immediately, then like a month later when you find out you're pregnant, but I like knew the day that it actually happened. I mean, you don't know the day that the sperm meets the egg, but I know the day that made it possible, which was 2 days after the hike. So the book has been, very long story short, more helpful now than ever because I've had to go, because this is the biggest change possible to have your first child. And you're like, oh my God, my entire life is about to change. And I don't know how exactly and
you have to embrace how much you don't know.
Yeah. And it's the fear of the unknown. And then just saying yes to whatever life is bringing me. So that book has been so helpful. And then every time I start to go into a panic, taking that step back into what he calls the seat of consciousness, but like I always very quickly get there by just going, who am I? And for some reason that works. And I can like pull back out of that panic spiral energy and just sit back and be like, I'm the one observing all this madness.
I'm watching the show.
Yeah, I'm watching my mind go bananas right now.
I mean, real quick about Untethered Soul, what's like your favorite takeaway that you would share with someone if they were thinking about reading that book?
I think my favorite takeaway was basically what I have already said, that we have no control in life. Mm-hmm. We do have free will, but it's different, right? You have free will, but you don't actually have control. And even my saying that might panic some people.
Absolutely.
Most of the time, and it's funny, after reading that book and now, everything I'm talking about is relating back to pregnancy, but it's just a weird thing that's happening to me right now.
I knew that we would talk about this. No, it's good. It's good.
Another thing that women love to do, that this is the second thing I've observed, is they love to tell you like their traumatic birth and pregnancy experience.
Just so you know what you're getting into, like you haven't heard every story already.
And then they have really strong opinions about it. And what I've found is that the women who they have like a traumatic experience, what is always true is that they had a plan and they couldn't release control. Yeah. And then as things started to change, they were like, that's not how it's supposed to happen. And so then as their body or their baby did a different thing and they had to have a C-section or they had to have a whatever, they were destroyed. Whereas
they created their own trauma.
Yes. And that's what the greatest thing that book teaches you is like, you don't have control. So you can have free will. You can have a plan of what you would like to happen.
An intention.
Sure.
Right. That's,
But then as things come to you, you got to be like, okay. And listen, there's always a circumstance, and I'm sure someone at home is arguing, a very specific circumstance where that wouldn't be true. There's another book called The Gift of Fear where this guy I don't know what his like role is officially called, but he teaches women how to protect themselves. And he was saying that most women who are in situations where they have been assaulted in some capacity, the one true thing that seems to always be is that they ignored their gut because we're always trying to be nice. So like you have groceries and you're coming up to your door and some guy comes up and is like, let me help you carry those. And your gut goes like, ooh, but then you don't want to be rude. So you go like, oh no, I'm fine. And you're not firm about it.
Yeah.
And then he's like, no, I'll help you. And then you like let him help you even though you're uncomfortable. And then something happens. Not that something would always happen, but oftentimes that's what the story is like in the beginning, is someone ignoring their gut instinct.
I don't know if you run into that a lot, having to teach lessons through giving perspective to any men in your life. Is that something that you run into that often?
Not too much.
Okay.
Amazingly.
Good.
Yeah. And I also have like, I don't have an anger around it either. I feel like everybody can learn something, but I also am not like angry at straight white men. Mm-hmm. They really can't.
Well, it's such a general thing.
You can't help the way you're raised. And like, I also don't, I'm not, as far as like what we want for people in life and in general, and I'm not into like, I understand the pendulum's always going to swing in the other direction, but I also don't like when people are being sort of, this is two different thoughts. So first of all, I don't like when it's like, oh, we're not going to hire any straight white men at all. That kind of thing with like jobs and whatever else. If we want equality in the workplaces, let's try and actually have equality. That would be cool. But I understand that the pendulum needs to swing for a while.
Right, because it's been all them.
Right.
So it is kind of, so it's but that creates such
and like the idea
dynamic.
of like, we don't book men on our show, or like we don't hire men. Like that to me feels like the very same thing as being done that you didn't like in the first place. And a lot of people will disagree with me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But also, we're in this culture where it's like people forget that disagreement is okay. It doesn't mean that if I necessarily don't agree with you, it doesn't mean that you're wrong. It means that we have different ideas.
Yes.
And we can talk about them and be like, that's interesting. And like, but we're in this climate right now where it's like, you don't agree with me? Burn you at the stake.
Right, and there's no respect. I mean, you can still hold respect for people if they have different values than you, if they're still at their heart intentionally good people. It's like that is definitely the balance that I have sometimes with some people in my life, where it is like how much to engage or to not engage, or to how much is that hurting me, or just having love for them. But yeah, just my partner Allie always says, in those tough situations, it's the best case is always to approach someone with what's the most loving thing I can do right now.
Right.
And then everyone wins to a certain degree, at least in that moment.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the first prong of those two was that you don't think people should be burned at the stake. What was the second?
Yeah, well, the second type of burning at the stake is and this is really controversial, but when people have actually done wrong in their lives. I don't think that their entire life should be ruined forever. I do think that, people should have consequences for their actions, but then also given an opportunity to learn and grow and do better.
Right.
And some people may disappoint us in that department, and maybe they don't want to work or be better, and
or
that's
can't,
unfortunate
or whatever. Yeah.
But I do think that some people can, and we can't know if we just shun everybody. Period.
Yes.
I don't know. It's tricky.
It's believing if people can change or not, believing if people can grow or not. And what is tricky, like what you're saying, is we forget even what social justice warrior means. Like social justice, it's outside of the justice system. There's this other type of justice, but it's like the rules are so all over the place.
Right.
And so it is like, it does go too far sometimes. And so that's what's tough. But I do think a lot more people are coming to the middle. I do see it on Twitter a lot, where people can go, I made a mistake. I'm admitting it. I'm going to change. I'm going to get better. Everyone does this all the time just because this is more public. That's for more minor indiscretions.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I do think, again, it's that pendulum swinging in reaction to, there not being consequences oftentimes.
Right.
And cops killing people and not having any punishment and keeping their jobs. And, that is just a whole terrible ongoing thing that's happened for so long. And we're only like newly aware of it with social media and everything like that.
Yeah.
And then in rape cases and whatever else, like just so many people just like totally getting off, and women not being believed when they do come forward. So that's why we have it swinging so far the other way. So I also understand it.
It's a balance.
Yeah. And I do think at some point, though, the swing hopefully comes back to where we can have a more measured response where, okay, yes, people do need to be held accountable for their actions. We do need a better justice system.
Mm-hmm.
We do need to believe women or anyone.
Yes.
It doesn't even need to be just women who have terrible things happen to them. And we also need to have a compassion for human beings all at once.
Yes.
It's a lot.
And if they just do that, we'll live in a utopia and it will be perfect.
God, you guys.
Yeah. I mean,
it's hard.
Yeah, there is a breadth of just tough things out there. What are some ways that you can access peace in your life in the face of those ideas?
I mean, unfortunately, sometimes at this point, which I think a lot of people do, I do kind of tune out with the news sometimes.
I don't think that's unfortunate. I think that's fine.
It's often too much. And what I do in place of that is I have set up reoccurring donations to, oh my God, I have at least like 6 organizations where I'm like, you guys are handling this much better than I can do on a daily basis. And I know that my money means more than, a tweet or an Instagram post. There was actually some article about that. And of course, I can't remember who wrote it or where to find it, but they were talking about how we have this fake idea of these social justice warriors where we're like, we think that tweeting or posting on Instagram is doing something, but it actually is not. Like, it doesn't actively help. Yes, it does help in raising an awareness, but it's not enough. You have to actually do something, either contribute your time or your money. Mm-hmm. Because people are just going to look at your story and go like, I agree, and also not do anything.
Yeah. Well, there's these machinations of the way our government works and the way businesses work and stuff like that. And like public outcry can get to a level where there's a change. But for the most part, money and the system of power that we have already established, you have to work through it, and that's work.
And I feel like that's something that everyone can do. You can set up like a $5 donation, and it's like, if you really care, and I don't know, even if you're struggling, like whatever you have, it's like you could not buy that one expensive coffee a week. You can set up the reoccurring donation. Yeah.
It's interesting though, you say, to talk about social media and its impact. I feel like you on social media provide such an added value.
Oh, thank you.
Because you just in the way you found how to curate your feeds, specifically on Instagram. For me, I just feel like you are such a conscious person, and you are promoting things in a way that people could be using that as a model. And I'm not just blowing smoke here. Like I think, especially like talking about different vegan foods.
Yeah.
Like, just letting people know, here's my breakfast sandwich. You can have this with Beyond Meat, with Violife cheese. Those are the things that I eat. I don't know if you've run into this with Beyond Meat. It screws with a little bit with my digestion.
Oh, that can happen.
But boy, is it delicious.
I don't eat like fake meats all the time, and I'm not vegan anymore. I was for 6 years, and then I was like just having some digestive issues, which I can't eat gluten.
Yeah.
And then I also can't really eat soy. So that was really hard for me being vegan, because usually the vegan and vegetarian options when you go somewhere have gluten in them. And if they don't have gluten in them, they have soy in them.
Yes.
So then I was like, what do I eat?
Did you see the Mr. Rogers movie? Did you see it?
No, I need to see it.
Mr. Rogers has so many tenets that we've already talked about, and I'm sure a lot that ring true with you. But one is this beautiful scene where he's talking to the main character, and he's like, and he just orders a bunch of veggies and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, are you a vegetarian?" And he says, "I could just never come to eat something that had a mother."
Oh, wow.
And I'm just like, fuck, this guy was perfect. Even though he would hate somebody calling him perfect, but it was thoughtful. And I am vegan now, and I was kind of in the middle of it, and just like that helped affirm it.
I don't agree entirely that the vegan diet is like blanket statement like is the healthiest diet for everybody.
Sure.
Because everyone's body's different. But what I cannot argue with is that it is the best diet for the planet and it's the best diet for animals. And we're so cruel. And the practices are absolutely inhumane, most of them. And then even like in my loving animals, it's like, I don't know, is any killing of them ever humane? I don't know. Right. That's like, it's so tricky. And
understanding.
I know there's a beautiful way to have an animal give its life for food, but no one does that anymore. Like if a Native American killed an animal for food, they would honor it and it would be this beautiful thing, and you don't just like kill the animal.
Yeah.
But we don't kill our own food.
There's a gratitude there.
And I would not be able to.
Right.
No way.
Yeah.
I can't kill a bug. I can kill a fly. That's about the only thing that I kill them with my hands. I don't know why. I have no compassion for flies. Sorry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, good to have the scoop on that. No, but you're very connected to animals. I have 3 more questions before we wrap up. The first one is about your dogs.
Right.
Can you tell me how your heart feels when you think and look at those dogs? Archie and Crouton?
Archie and Crouton. Yeah. First I had Archie, and Archie's my boy. Like, oh, I'm so hormonal right now. I'm like well up with tears even just saying Archie. But I used to look at him and go, you're my best friend. He's just the best. But he's my dog, only me. I didn't get him with anybody. So he's 7 now. So I've had him for a long time, and he was my baby, and I'm obsessed with him. And then Crouton, I'm so proud because he was like, I got him as an older puppy, but Crouton was a mess when I got him. And he had food aggression. He had been with an unneutered dog. Mm. He was not potty trained. And I think the people who had him were like punishing him for going potty even though he was a baby. So then he would like hold it all day and then have an accident in his crate, which they don't normally do. So I was like shooting at the time. So I'd wake up at 4 a.m. to go to Angie Tribeca, and I would take this puppy out of his crate and he'd be covered in shit. And I would be like, oh my God. And I'd be like washing him at 5 a.m. before going to set, which is just insane. And luckily it was such an animal friendly set because we had a dog as a main character.
Right.
So I would show up and everyone was so helpful and happy. And there's one guy, Ruben, in the costume department who loves dogs. And I would show up on set and he would go, give me the baby. And then I would give him to him and I would be shooting. And then he would check in with me and he'd be like, he poopy, he pee-pee, he's sleeping.
Get that on a shirt.
Great.
He poopy, he pee-pee, he's sleeping.
Yes.
That's so sweet.
Wonderful. So they're just the best. And I'm obsessed with them. They're so funny to me.
From what I've seen, they do a lot of funny things.
They're really I love them and I think they're like actually my friends.
They are. It's not silly.
I love them.
And talking, I think it's okay to talk to them and tell them that you love them and that they're your best friend and that they're strong and brave and wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. It's cool. It's just seeing it. It's cool. And now I have dogs with my girlfriend and it's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
I get that. You're engaged.
Yeah.
You're in love.
Yes.
Can you describe to me what your love looks like?
Well, this is unlike any relationship I've ever had, which is refreshing. But you don't even know, right? Until you...
Yeah.
And I think each relationship I've had in life, it's like you're just walking up the steps and then you're like, oh, there was a view up here this whole time. And now Damien, he's the view. But this relationship is the most communicative relationship I've ever had. I tell people all the time, oftentimes in the past, if there was a disagreement with my partner, I feel like there would be an apology that's just like an I'm sorry to just make it stop, but not an actual I'm sorry that is an understanding of why the situation happened or why I was upset and I'm a very fair fighter. Like I said earlier, like I'm really on board with like, you know, you're not wrong. I'm not wrong. We're not agreeing. And like, why is that? Let's figure that out. And I'm not like trying to win.
Mm-hmm.
And
because that's an ego thing. That's not a heart thing.
Yeah, because ultimately you want to get along with the person. And luckily he is a person who understands that and is also able to have that mentality. And whenever we've, you know, it's like we don't fight. We've had arguments and disagreements, but we are so communicative that it's not ever like a fight.
Right.
Whereas
it's a
he's
challenge.
had like screaming fights with most of his past relationships. And I have had fights, maybe not screaming just because that wasn't the nature of our personalities. Right. Yeah. And then you just hold the resentment. And I feel like it's so refreshing not to have that this time. And then like, this is also the first relationship where we take care of each other. Like I think I have often taken care of people in the past, but I've never been taken care of. And it actually was challenging for me to allow someone to take care of me.
Yeah.
And even little things like when I'm sick, I don't want anyone to touch me, and I don't want help, and I don't want you to be near me. And part of that is just me, and that will never go away. And I don't know if that's because I'm an only child. I have no idea. Whereas like when he's sick, he wants to be cuddled and whatever else. And it's challenging for me because I'm like, oh my God, get over yourself.
Well, because you are not, you would give what you want back, and you're not going to give anything because you're like, why should you? I don't need anything. Why should you need that?
If he was like on his deathbed, sure, that would be different. But I'm like, you have a cold.
But you've been pushing through that veneer, chipping away at your sick heart.
It's funny that I'm like so like compassionate and giving like with animals and what, but then a person is sick and I'm like, get over yourself. Here's some NyQuil.
It'll be fun to continue exploring that.
If you're not bleeding profusely, I'm not going to help you. I'm making myself sound like really mean.
No, it's understandable. Yes.
It's just so different. And at first I think we both were doing this thing where we were testing it, you know?
If it was real.
We're so used to fighting with people that we would like try and create there was like a little phase where when we first moved in, we'd be like trying to create little fights almost just to like make sure the other person loves you. It's so funny.
It is funny.
I mean, it's not funny, but
no, it's not. And it's like, why are you doing this? And but it's also, then it's having that extra level of compassion for them, knowing that they're testing you to love them. And then you just have to hopefully love them more.
Yeah.
And then.
Well, and for me personally, you know, because I can really only speak for myself, I know that it was for the first time ever, here was a person who 100% was showing up for me and without a doubt was like, you're my person. I'm going to be with you for the rest of my life. I want to have a family with you. Let's do this thing. And in the past, I had to like wonder if the person wanted a future with me and in some way like convince them to love me. And so here's a person who's like, no, I need no convincing. I think you're wonderful. And it's like, what? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. You
so
don't
that's
know
what
me.
that was.
Yeah.
And then I would just be difficult to test it.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And as long as you don't take that too far, it's going to work out great.
And I didn't. I didn't push it too far. And I very quickly became aware of it. And the thing about us is like, I talked about it with him. I was like, this is what I'm doing and I'm going to try to stop.
and he's like, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool.
It exists.
It's very cool. It does. Well, yeah, that's the nice thing. I like to hear about these things because there was a time in my life where I didn't believe it truly existed.
Right.
I thought it was a farce and people were fooling themselves, and that's just not true.
You know, like they say, you don't know what you want often until you have had what you don't want. So when what you don't want appears, a way to look at it in a positive way is like, well, now I know what I don't want, which tells me what I do want.
Dre, how does your heart feel right now?
Good. It's feeling really good. I've gotten past the whole panic of growing a human inside of me. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I'll have phases of more panic.
Well, you'll have this as a little time capsule of when you were less panicked. And that's what I'm glad about.
Right now, I'm feeling like really happy and like, oh my gosh, all this great stuff is coming to me. We found a great place to move into. She's healthy. Our relationship is great. We also are moving I was in a 500 square foot tiny little 1-bedroom, and he moved in with me. And if you can live in that together without killing each other, I think you're supposed to be together. It's amazing.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.